There it comes. Okay. Good morning or good noon, I guess it is today, for a special board meeting to consider the implications of COVID-19 on county operations. So we have the three commissioners, Mr. Johnson, we have Amanda with us this morning, and if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Very short agenda. Keith, would you take us through?
Certainly. Thank you,
please.
Mr. Commissioner, or Chairman. Before you today is consideration of two resolutions that are a reaction to what's going on globally, nationally, and within the state of Washington with respect to restrictions being asked of the public to minimize contact amongst individuals and people, and asked us to put a plan in place to make sure that we have a continuity of operations of county government. That is certainly something that cannot just shut down. We have to have a mechanism to be able to protect public safety. We obviously have a jail to operate during this period of turmoil, and a number of other county functions that can't simply close down for a period of time. So the resolution that's before you, the first one, is to allow the county commissioners to participate by telephone in conducting county business, so that over the next few weeks, as this reaction to the COVID-19 virus kind of unfolds globally and other restrictions are in place, we will still have an opportunity to conduct official business of the county's Board of Commissioners through telephone. Our current policy by resolution requires the presence of two commissioners, and the third one can come in by telephone. But because of the requested restrictions that we have minimal contact with each other, felt it was important to at least for the short term, adopt this new resolution that allows all three of you to call in to conduct county business. I have set up a bridge line with our IT department where I can host the call, give you instructions on how to call in to participate. It would still be available to the public where they could hear it. We would broadcast it through our AV capture system so that the public can still be involved and know what's going on, but it would allow us to maintain the social distancing requirements that are being asked of us by both the federal and state government, our local health officials. So that's the first item of business. The second resolution, obviously, is the continuity of business operations that turns a lot of responsibility over to elected officials and department heads to adjust their office hours, to close where necessary, but still be able to maintain their core functions of county government. And with that, I'll certainly answer any questions that you have. I don't think I'm telling you anything that you haven't heard multiple times already. There have been a number of multiple phone calls with the Benton Franklin Health District. I was on a phone call yesterday afternoon with all of my counterparts and WASAC leadership to understand what other counties are doing across the state of Washington. The resolutions before you are very similar. They're not always identical, but they're very similar in terms of being able to allow the closing of public offices to the general public for personal access. I have talked with the other elected officials. All of them have plans in place to be able to keep a minimal or skeleton type staff in the office when they need to, have the public still be able to interact and conduct their business when they need to. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be necessarily easy, but it will allow us to continue those core functions of county government that are required. So, like I said, I'm glad to stand for any questions that you may have or any discussion that you want to.
Questions?
Yeah, Keith, if we so choose, we could still attend in person, correct?
Oh, certainly. Depending on,
The outbreak.
well, yes, I suppose the governor. I don't know the full scope of his authority, but I suppose the governor could stop all public meetings. If that were the case, we would have to do it by telephone.
Gotcha.
But barring some kind of order from the governor or the federal government or some legal authority, yes, the commissioners could all participate in person. We could spread out like this. The current recommendation is for groups where we expect 10 or more people to limit access. Certainly the four of us could meet and we could publicly broadcast that. And
Okay, second question along with this COVID-19. Is there anybody monitoring who's flying into our area on aircraft and where they're coming from and the outbreak of that area that they're coming from and checking them at the airport?
yes, the county is not doing that kind of work, but the Centers for Disease Control has some limits on people entering the country and being tested. And then, of course, the health district is working with the airport to monitor.
Same with the Greyhound bus?
I don't know what Greyhound Bus is doing. Most companies are putting together or are in the process of implementing reaction plans, and so I have not heard specifically what they're doing. But
Questions, Commissioner? Thoughts?
Just following up on that last question, same thing can be said for Amtrak, and each of those agencies has different organizations that are responsible for them, and while I don't know that they're doing that, I certainly hope they are. I think it's a good question. With respect to the second resolution on granting of authority, I didn't see anything in there that requires anything other than a decision by an elected official to make those calls. Have we given any consideration to consistency of application of that authority, where we could have one department that is 5% manned and another that's 90% manned, and the perceptions both of equity and health risk among different departments and disparate treatment?
yeah, those are considerations that we took some time to think about. It's extremely difficult to, at this juncture, provide a general policy that applies to everyone. For example, we're right in the middle of collecting taxes, and that's going to have a significant challenge to the Treasurer's office to be able to operate through a drop box to collect taxes. But at the same time, other offices may not have a need for anybody here during this period of time. I would expect that HR, for example, OPD, generally speaking, other than for arraignments and hearings, those kinds of things, may not need to be here quite as much as they were. So a little bit depends on the scope or the mission of each office in terms of setting their office hours and the number of personnel that are required. So that's why it tends to allow the elected official or the department head to make those decisions. Certainly we would expect coordination with my office to communicate with commissioners, again, communicating with the elected officials on their needs and requirements if it appears that we're running into an inequitable situation or that somebody is either overreaching or not taking seriously the expectations of social distancing. That would be an appropriate time for the commissioners to perhaps have a discussion with that individual or that department.
Yeah. So, one, glad to hear that was part of the consideration in drafting the resolution. Two, you made a statement about coordination with our office. I didn't see anything in the resolution that requires that. So if that's the intent, we should at least communicate with the departments and make that request of them.
Yeah, there are a couple of references to the county administrator, and perhaps that's a presumption that I'm coordinated with each of you, but that is certainly the intent, is to make sure that the board stays informed of any decisions that are being made.
Right. So we've not asked any of our departments to identify, not by individual, but by position, what those key and essential functions are, perhaps that would be a useful parallel exercise, not anything that would delay this process, but going forward so that we have a sense of what those positions are. I think it maybe gives us better insight as to the various missions in the county that might need additional support as well.
Right.
So I'd recommend that we ask our elected officials to identify, again, not individuals, but functions or positions that they deem key and essential. That also gives us some idea of the number of people working in close proximity by office.
Yeah, I think a great suggestion.
Other than that, it seems an unfortunate but necessary step. So,
With that, if there's nothing further, entertain a motion for
so unless there's objection, Mr. Chairman, I'll just start with them as they're presented in numerical order here. This is Resolution 2020-073. Move for approval as presented. Resolution 2020-073 entitled Attendance of Franklin County Commissioners by Telephonic Means.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll just give you time to sign there before it's not like we have a really deep agenda
Push,
today.
you know. Okay.
Okay. Next up is Resolution 2020-074. Move for approval as presented, entitled In the Matter of Declaration of Emergency in County, granting authority to adjust office hours effective March 18, 2020, and approve telecommuting options and/or paid administrative leave for the period March 18, 2020 through April 5, 2020.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's also a footnote down the bottom of our agenda that is on the website. So anybody that has a concern, it basically is telling us where the changes to the meeting will take place to comply with the restrictions Governor Inslee has imposed on committees. Commissioners will continue to meet weekly unless additional requirements are imposed by the governor that makes meetings impossible. And the changes, only 15 seats available in the commissioner's room. This will be enforced. And live streaming is available on Franklin County website. So just go on the website and get the link and so.
So, Mr.
Anything
Chairman,
further?
if I could just add a couple of other notes. I had occasion to be talking with a couple of members of the Washington State House this morning on this issue, and while none of this is official and nor should it be taken as an expression of anything other than me sharing what was shared with me this morning on the phone. And what was shared was that Governor Inslee is being told, considering the potential or the need for further shutting down state offices and state government up to and the possibility of including shutting down the entire state government. Again, I just want to emphasize there's no official statement to that effect. It's just been shared by members of the House that that's being considered. I present that or offer that because I think it should serve as stimulus for us and especially for Mr. Johnson to be looking at, and this is why I earlier brought up the issue of key and essential functions, of identifying which ones affect us in which manner. For example, recording documents and items in the auditor's office, whether we do that or not could mean the difference between a major part of our economy here locally, the real estate industry, could come to a screeching halt overnight. And those are functions that presumably could be done by individuals in disparate locations. But we ought to be thinking about having some sort of vehicle to carry on some of those key functions, even if we have to close public buildings and courthouses. So we're obviously not going to get to the answer here now, but recognizing that this could get even more restrictive, I think that key and essential personnel and function discussion needs to happen soon.
We have a lot of staff and supervisors. Any comments from?
I do have something to say. So I've already, with my office, we do simple files for all excise bills on.
Do you mind coming to a microphone?
So my office takes care of the real estate excise, and the auditors does the recording. So we've worked with all three offices, and we are online, and we'll be able to remotely check in and do it at home if needed to. And so with the VPN, and so we've already got that taken care of.
I would act surprised, but I'm not at all surprised that you're ahead of things, Josie.
Well,
In fairness, I suspect your office is too.
Peter McInder for County Assessor.
And I don't know how the coroner gets ahead of schedule, but
The auditor's office, our office, and the treasurer's office are all intertwined in those transactions for commerce. So we do have the ability to do most of that electronically. However, there are some things that will still require some physical contact with the public, I would think, at some level. Signing and recording of plats. The other thing is doing advance tax. Not everybody does the simple file approval for continuing use. So sometimes we can encourage that, and we might be able to direct people that way, but it's going to take some communication and coordination with our offices to know what the capabilities of everybody else's staff and what they're doing. So if and when you get those core or essential processes and core necessary staff, if that could be shared back, because sometimes we don't always think of, the treasurer needs to do this, but that's also got to happen in our office. So we might see something that somebody's missing, or be able to add, hey, we can do this a different way.
yeah, and my suggestion was that we poll the electeds,
Right.
not that we make the list.
No. Yeah, I would agree. Once you get that list, if you could share
Sure.
it back, and then we
Absolutely.
could say, hey, what about this? Or, maybe we can do work around this way for that problem. So, thank you.
thank you.
I just make it clear, though, if your offices need masks, or if they feel like they're comfortable wearing masks, we've got them down here, so just let us know. We've got gloves, so we can make those available if it comes to that.
I do see the judge here from the district court. He may want to comment on the judiciary.
We have an order that we've entered that kind of puts everything on hold until April 24th, I think, after April 24th. Between now and then, anybody who is charged with certain criminal offenses, DUI, assaulted behavior, domestic violence, things of that sort, we will arraign those as they occur, and so we are going to have those. Other things, we're just going to have them set out beyond that. We've asked the State Patrol and the Sheriff's Office to put individuals' phone numbers right on the citations so we'll know where to reach them. We're going to ask that they be cited into court after that date. The State Supreme Court has suspended certain rules and put new rules in place. We're following those. I haven't looked at the Superior Court's order that is on the website as well, but I'm sure that it does something similar, but I can't speak for that. So we will let you know the people we need. We don't need a full staff perhaps the whole time, but we can figure out who we do need when we do need them. Thank you.
Gary, you have video conferencing, video
We have
arrangements?
videoing now. We just got it in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to be working with this gentleman back here to make sure that we can try and get closer to using that. It's kind of been in between because of the coordination of translator. We need the interpreter present. We need to have the jail available to do that, so we have to shuffle some schedules. But I think this is going to bring us closer together in getting that done sooner rather than later. Superior Court's doing it. I really don't know how much. These guys could tell you better, but we want to be doing it as well.
Yeah.
And so we put that in our order that if we can arraign people by video or audio rather than bring them into the courtroom, we would prefer to do that.
Yeah.
And we left that as an option in our order.
Thank you.
Great question. Thanks.
So, follow up to that, we are triaging our inmates. And before all this started, we had already taken safety implementations in corrections. As the judge said, and I'm sure Sean will follow up, we're working with, we have
Sheriff, I don't think.
We have a jail hearing room or courtroom, which I call it, we've been working on for quite some time. We intend on using it fully as much as we can. We'll adapt to those issues with what the judges need in the process. We will limit the movement of inmates in the county buildings.
Sure. For the record, sorry, could you come up to the microphone so we can...
Yeah, we have the issue of getting a recording that is something that when people are listening to it online, they can hear you, and I know you don't want any of them to not be able to hear what you have to share.
Yeah, I'm poetic at this. I think it's been probably 2 years ago in the corrections facility that we implemented a courtroom, if you will, where we can do things telephonically up into the courtrooms into Superior Court, trying to limit the movement of our inmates throughout the county building for various and sundry reasons. Before all these announcements even came out, we had implemented practices in the jail as far as trying to contain, sicknesses and those issues, and it's well underway and it's established, and we are doing those things. What I was trying to say is that we will do whatever the courts need in order to do those type of in-camera hearings or digital hearings, and we've been in discussion with how to do that. And we'll adapt and overcome as problems arise. But I think today is going to be the first day of having hearings just right in the jail and having them ported up into the courtroom to limit that access with each other. There's some problems, but we'll get it figured out.
Yeah. If you don't mind, quick question. The jails, given the close proximity and living conditions, seems like they might have some unique transmission disease risks, and I'm sure it's not limited to just COVID. But are you hearing anything in law enforcement circles around the state about any cases in jails and methods to ensure that people coming into the population aren't infectious?
The answer is no. We haven't had any new reportings of those type of things in our jails. We've been limiting transporting, moving inmates across the state amongst each other with DOC and the other county jails and those type of things. It's virtually just kind of shut down right now. Only as needed is absolutely necessary. So the movement of inmates is pretty much shut down. Within our jail, we've tried to triage it to a point where we're going to have inmates together, but we're bringing, as they come in and they're taking, we go through all the safety issues. We have a registered nurse standing there at intake, and doctors, trying to check and see for this issue, for the COVID thing before they're even put into the system. If those signs are there, they're not. We don't book them.
Of course, as I understand, they could be infected even before they show symptoms. And so, as I recall, the Justice Center in Benton County has got, if I remember right, a wing that wasn't in use or was excess to their needs. I'm just wondering if that's a place for new intakes to go for 14 days until they mix with general population. Not looking for an answer, just throwing out an idea and mulling over how we reduce the risk to people that we already have incarcerated.
All I can tell you is, yes, there is a wing over in Benton County Correction Center that actually never opened from the time it was built, which is a pretty large wing. What the status of that is, I have no idea. Internally here in our corrections facility, we have a complete pod that's set up, ready to go should those issues occur internally. If you think about it, what a better place to be isolated.
Well, and one of the worst places to be if they bring somebody in who's infected,
Yeah.
because you can't get away.
We're staying on top of it as best we can, and we've lowered our inmate population. I'm not sure what it is today. We have the ability of 300 plus bed spaces in the jail. I think yesterday we were at 170. We average usually between 210, so you slowly but surely, and the courts are, they're just not ordering people arrested and booked into jail unless it's an absolute necessity. So I suspect we will see our inmate population just decrease naturally during this process and probably go pretty low. So, yep. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else like to share? Yeah, Jim.
Thank you. I just wanted to address a few things in the auditor's office. As far as the impact on employees, I know payroll is certainly a big issue. We're going to be able to handle that just fine. AP, accounts payable, same thing. So most of our processes through one solution. We've been working on this, with the treasurer, with HR, with IS and our department, to work towards that electronic workflow and approval process, and as much paperless as possible. So we feel good about that. We have staff that are going to be able to work, limited staff here, and then through VPN from their homes, and they should be able to do all of that work remotely or on site. So I'm confident with our ability to perform in that area. Regarding the impact to the citizens, if we're shutting the doors to our office, which is what we're anticipating doing, in recording, just over 60% of our transactions now are done via e-record. And that's they jumped up quite a bit because the treasurer started doing e-read as well. And so working with the treasurer, we've really been able to drive our electronic recordings. That has been our goal for quite some time. We are going to have some transactions that are done face-to-face. Marriage licenses will be a unique one. We've had, as you can imagine, panic brides calling, wondering what they're going to do. Anybody who has a venue that handles weddings?
I can relate to panic brides, yeah.
It's pretty crazy. People are having to cancel their wedding and so forth. And so we're working with those folks the best we can, but most of that is going to be handled via mail to get marriage licenses. Other things, the Department of Licensing, similar. We do a lot of electronic transactions through the DOL website, so tab renewals should not be a problem. We've worked closely with our sub-agents. They are going to stay open during this time unless the situation changes. Our West Side sub-agent, when we worked with her, she now has 2 locations with drive-through options for customers. So even in the event of a more substantial closure, she will be able to handle transactions through the drive-through. Our office is going to recommend, and we've worked with her on this, any title transfers will be going through the sub-agent offices right now. In particular, West Side with their drive-through locations gives us that ability to continue business. So impact to the county car sales and title transfers, it may be a little busier there to handle those, but we've got those covered. And elections. We are just getting ready to certify the presidential primary, which will be on Friday. We'll certify that. So it is a good time for us to diminish public interaction from the standpoint of that demand will go down slightly. We won't have an election going. Citizens can register to vote or change their information online. We'll have somebody available to answer questions. If this is extended to filing week, we will be able to handle that via online, via mail. And so for the time being, I think we've got everything covered, but we don't know yet what we don't know, but we'll do our best to handle citizens' needs as they arise.
Jeff, is there any change in Connell's licensing?
Connell Licensing will be staying open for the time being. That location is great. It serves a specific need for that community, so they don't have to drive into town. She does not get overwhelmed with business and can, at this point, adequately handle the spirit of keeping the distance and the social distance between her customers. So we should be okay there.
I know there's been some changes in ownership up there, so
Yeah, so far, Tirsa up there has said she's doing fine and can help us through this too.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a couple of follow-up comments to that. Jeff, you may want to consult with the health department and see if there's any reason to be concerned about our staff handling large quantities of paper ballots. I don't know what the resiliency and the life is of the virus if somebody sneezes on their ballot, but they may want to use gloves. But might check with the health department to see if that's even a concern. It's not like the U.S. mail where so much is automated, people aren't actually touching it. Your office is actually handling each one. With respect to weddings, since I do have a little bit of extra background in this, some weddings are 4, 5, 10 people, and those are going on. Other cases, people are simply postponing to later in the year, and some of them are doing mini ceremonies and then holding their receptions later in the year. So a lot of flexibility. People are looking for workarounds. Mr. Chairman, if I might, there's one other topic I wanted to bring up that has to do with this issue, and that's bi-county employees. We have historically, in my opinion, not done as good a job as we could or probably should with respect to bi-county employees when we have these unique circumstances. Administratively, they get handled by Benton County as Benton County employees, but at the end of the day, they're employees of both counties, and I don't really know what, if anything, is being done to focus on that area. I have heard from 2 different people who are connected with the Human Services arena and Human Services Department, and one that is connected with the courts and juvenile justice. And it doesn't seem to be a lot of information flowing in the bi-county employee arena. So anything that we can do to encourage that, I think, would be healthy.
any thoughts on that, Keith?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I agree. Information probably has not gotten to everyone that it needs to, but I have discussed this with my counterparts in Benton County. I spoke specifically with the county administrator and one of their commissioners earlier this week, and our resolution mirrors pretty closely their resolution, and so the impact to any distinction in impact for bi-county employees should be non-existent. We told them that we would support what they're trying to do, and they agreed that they'd support what we're trying to do. So we'll certainly communicate that information, not just to employees by county, but even our Franklin County employees. We owe them an obligation to be informative. I plan on drafting a press release specific to this issue that would go out to the media this afternoon to let them know kind of what to expect. And I don't plan on going anywhere, so I'm always available for questions and responses back from them to make sure that people are well informed of what we're doing and why.
And if we can precede that press release with an all-employee email so that our people get it from us first, that'd be a good idea.
Last chance.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up a little bit. Again, Peter Mackinder, County Assessor. One of the processes we do at this time of the year is reapplication for senior exemptions and new applications for senior exemptions, and those people are one of the vulnerable groups. So we have approximately half of our seniors have been into the office to renew. We are going to send out a mailing to all of them requesting that they not come back in or call the office after the 1st of May. The typical the deadline, that is, there is no RCW or WAC stating the deadline for the county assessor for reapplication. So the end of May has traditionally been ours. I'm going to extend that till the end of June, and then we'll reevaluate at that point if it needs, how we need to accommodate those people. But we're really going to try and encourage those people to stay home and we'll work with them as much as possible because they seem to be the most vulnerable at this point. The other thing is, too, once we somewhat get back to normal operations, one of the big pieces of the budget process that we do for assessments is new construction, and that includes contact with the public. And we're going to have to, depending on how long this goes, we might have to adjust so we can meet all of our deadlines to certify value and all of those things that will need to be done for the budgetary process later in the year. So we'll make contingency plans for that, work forward as much as we can, and we're going to try and facilitate commerce as much as we can in our office. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything new, Carly, in your office that these resolutions will affect?
Yeah, my office has this week implemented rotating remote work. So there's just 2 of us in the office starting next week. And I intend to send an email out to all of the employees, but starting next week we will have 1 person in the office at any given time to continue to provide the services, because we understand regardless of how many county employees are working from home, we've also got a good subset of our employees, law enforcement, that don't, that are essential and will be here, and we understand our commitment to support them. So we will be rotating through, and like I said, I'll send that out countywide, but certainly want to make sure that, and I've talked to several elected officials, but making sure that we're taking good care of our employees and that they're staying safe and taking care of their families as well.
Carly, can you clarify, just for people that are listening and maybe a little bit for me too, people who are working from home, what our expectations are for them and their availability, as whether it's they have to be available by phone or whether they have to be subject to a 2-hour recall if needed? Are there any set guidelines for that, or is that a department by department policy?
Some of it's going to be department by department depending on the needs. I know, like for my hospice, we're rotating in the office time. That might not be appropriate for all offices, as well as I believe the resolution that the board approved does indicate that people need to be available during their regular working hours. I mean, at this point, there's really nowhere to go, so it's not like,
right.
You wouldn't be available. You might welcome the call into the office, depending on how your family situation is, with everybody all working from home together. But certainly those considerations are going to vary by office, job function, individual.
And presumably their pay status is unchanged, or just working from a different location. And again, not everybody listening or watching this is going to have the benefit of the resolution to read, so that's why I'm trying to get some of these higher level points into the verbal record.
Yes, absolutely. What the resolution that the board adopted today allows us to do is to implement our emergency closure policy, which does allow for that salary status to stay unchanged. It allows us to, to pay those people that don't need to be in the office to not, they don't have the economic hardship of not being here. It keeps people from coming in when they maybe shouldn't come in.
Not required to take leave. They were just working from home.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
of course.
Anybody else? Seeing none, anything else, commissioners or Keith?
I think so.
We've got a Board of Health meeting this afternoon, in person or by phone. I'll be calling in, and that's at 1:30, I recall.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go over. And so, other than that, if there's nothing else for the good of the board, we are adjourned. Thank you for joining us today and your input. Unfortunately, this is a very fluid situation right now. It could change by this afternoon. Thanks, Amanda.